Hello, I am so excited for today's video because I have been wanting to film this for so long, but I wanted to wait to the end of the year where I have enough books so I can actually talk about them, and I had been waiting to read my last book so then I can just compile it all together and share my thoughts. So yeah, today we're going to be talking about famous booktok books, which is funny because I don't even have TikTok. I have Instagram and everything's repurposed anyway, so I have a lot of thoughts and I'm gonna try my best to not be too harsh because I feel like I might be a harsh rater. I don't know, but I would love to write my own book one day, and if someone's completely obliterating it and roasting it, I would feel some type of way. So let me try my best, but we'll see. But yeah, there'll be no spoilers, so let's just start in order from the first book I read to the most recent. And the books I have are The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, The Love Hypothesis, It Ends With Us, The Wedding Crashers, It Starts With Us, The Unhoneymooners, and Get a Life, Chloe Brown. So all these books I saw online, people were talking about how good they are. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna read it. Let's see if I like it. Some I did, some I was like, what the hell? So let's start with The 12 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. So I read this around winter, springtime. I don't know the exact date of 2022. So almost a year ago. So this story is about this famous actress named Evelyn Hugo, and she was famous in the 50s, and then in the 80s she just randomly fell off the face of the earth and stopped acting. Fast forward to present day, she is ready to have a story written about her, but she will only have it written by this one writer named Monique. And throughout the story we learn about Evelyn's life, and we figure out why Monique was specifically chosen to write Evelyn's biography and how they're actually connected in some way. I saw this book a lot online. People were saying this was the best book they've ever read. And honestly, this book was kind of out of my comfort zone. I'm not really one to care much about stories from back in the day. I would never have read this book if it wasn't recommended. Let's just put it like that. But I did like it. It was pretty entertaining. I can't remember how long it took me to read it, but I don't think it was very long because it was pretty interesting. And personally for me, I love guessing what's gonna happen. And there's no way I could have guessed why Monique and Evelyn were connected. It's not one of those things that's super obvious. So I really appreciate that. I like books that can surprise me. So there is romance in this book, which I like. I don't think I've ever read a fiction book where there hasn't been romance. So I like that there was some romance in this. But overall, I do think it was kind of overhyped. I don't think this was the best book I've ever read. It was a very good book, but my rating for this was a 3.8 stars. You'll notice throughout this, I'm pretty specific with my ratings. So I gave this a 3.8. I feel like it could have been higher if it wasn't overhyped because I was expecting for my mind to be blown, but it wasn't. But it was still a good book. So that's why I'm gonna give it 3.8 stars. Next, we have The Love Hypothesis, and this was the next book I read. I finished it September 23rd. 2022, and I have some thoughts. This book I saw everywhere. I was like, I have to read this book because the way people were talking about it, I was like, it must be great. So pretty much it's about this PhD student. Her name's Olive, and her best friend ends up dating a guy that she went on a date with once or something like that. And Olive is completely fine with it. She never really liked that guy that much anyway. So when her friend and not her ex, but let's just call her ex, start dating, she's fine with it. But the friend feels so bad, and in panic, I guess Olive tells her friend that she's been seeing someone. And so I guess one night she said she was on a date with the guy, and she was actually in her lab doing laboratory things. And then she sees her friend and she panics and kisses the first guy she sees, which is this guy named Adam. And he is a professor there that a lot of people think is too harsh and doesn't really like very much. So she assaults him. They pretty much go on and do this fake dating thing, and she's pretty much just fake dating so that her friend feels comfortable enough to date her ex. And one thing about this book and a lot of other books that I've been reading is that these people are in their 30s and they act like they're teenagers. I thought a lot of this stuff written in this was kind of crap. And it was so weird because a lot in the book, the friend, I wish I remembered her name, but the friend kept pushing Olive to do romantic stuff with the professor, saying oh, that's your man, go give him a kiss. That's your man, go sit on his lap because there's no seats left in this lecture, so sit on his lap. Like, she kept pushing. And that's some of the stuff you do in like middle school when you have like a boyfriend in middle school. It's like, oh, hold hands, and like, oh, so cute. That's literally what her friend does all the time. And it bugged me so much. And I was just like, so many times I put this book down and I was like, what the hell am I reading? Like, I'm 23 and they're older than me in this book, and I felt like I was in high school. It was really lame for me. And like, I kind of don't like also how when there's books where we already know Olive is the main character, but I don't like feeling like the friends and the supporting characters treat her like she is also the main character in their lives. I don't know if that makes sense, but I felt like the characters around her friends, really cared a little bit too much about her life that I feel like wasn't really realistic. You know, I want you to be the main character, but like also have the friends have other things going on, and I didn't feel like that was it for me. I felt like the characters cared more about her life than their own life, and that's what I didn't like. And also the way every time Adam comes into the picture, this girl talks about how crazy tall he is, and that is it. I kept reading it and I was like, why does she keep talking about how tall he is? He's a skyscraper. And I'm like, come on. Okay, so I had to switch angles because the lighting was weird and it's still being weird, but we kind of have to go with it. She kept talking about how tall this man was, and it really bugged me because I get it. Like, I understood the first time that he's tall, so I don't really need to always hear it. And I also felt like it was very unrealistic how much Olive went out of her way to fake date a professor just so her friend would feel comfortable enough to date her ex. I don't know. That seems very unrealistic to me, and I would never. Like, if I was truly okay with my friend dating a guy I went on one date with, then she should just take my word. And if she doesn't want to, then that's on her. Period. It's getting really bright right now. But my skin, though, she's looking nice. All right. There's a lot more that I could say about this. I felt like the ending chapter was very dragged on and it didn't have to exist. Overall, I rated this a 3 out of 5, which is kind of surprising looking back, but I remember my mentality, and I think I'll kind of stick with it, is I rate a book a 3 out of 5 if it's not like terribly hard for me to finish it. A 3 out of 5 to me is like bare minimum, like not trash, but still interesting enough for me to finish it, because I was wanting to finish the end. Like, I liked it enough where I could finish it, but I wouldn't recommend it. But I enjoyed reading it. Does that make sense? I don't know if they counteract each other. And it's so overhyped. So I was kind of like very disappointed in this. All right, so the next one is It Ends With Us. I was also pretty excited to read this one because just like The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, this was also a book where a lot of people were talking about how this was their favorite book ever and the best book they've ever read. So I was like, I'm trying to be like you, my boy. So I read it. This is about a girl named Lily, and she moves from Maine to Boston and is pretty much trying to open a flower shop. And she meets this guy named Ryle at the top of a building, like a roof, I think, if I remember correctly. And they are flirty and they like each other and yada, yada, yada. And they eventually get into a relationship, and he has his own problems, but you know, love. And then one day they go out to eat and she sees that her first love is working at the restaurant. And when she sees him, like all these feelings come up, and it's pretty much a love triangle thing going on, but there's a lot of deeper meaning in this story, one of them being domestic abuse. And I've never read a story like this before. I feel like this was my first big girl book. Like, it had heavy topics, and I always read and have read very lighthearted stuff. I mean, I feel like Evelyn Hugo has also been kind of like a big girl book, but I felt like this one hit home a little bit more just because domestic abuse is something that like a lot of people struggle with. So it was very eye-opening, and I felt like I learned a lot, and that's not something I can say with a lot of books. I read this from September 24th to September 25th. I still kind of feel like this book was overhyped. I don't think it was the best book I've ever read, but also if someone says it is their favorite book and the best book they ever read, I can't trash it because I still think it was pretty good. So I rate this a 3.8. I feel like it takes a lot for me to rate a book a 4, and I don't know if this was just there yet. I think initially I thought it was a 4, but I was like, what if I read a book that's actually a 4? So to be safe, I rated it a 3.8. And I read another book before I read the second one, but I'm just gonna go ahead and we're gonna talk about the second one anyways. So It Starts With Us is the sequel to It Ends With Us, and they look pretty cute together. If you are interested, I made a whole reading vlog like a month or two ago in the moment thoughts. I can go a little bit more in detail, I guess. It takes us through, you know what, I realized that I can't really describe this book unless you've read the first one. So if you want to know more about this, just watch that video I made, because I can't even begin to start this book without spoiling this. So yeah, overall though, I think I read this also in a day, October 18th to October 19th. I thought this was better than the first book, but I realized they're kind of the same. I rated this a 3.9, but I think overall they're both a 3.8, 3.9-ish. I really liked it. Like, I really don't have very much to say without spoiling it. So if you want to know the spoilers, like I said, you know where to go. If you like the first book, you'll like the second book. And I really like how the author, like, you understand why the background looks the way it does in the cover and why it's called It Ends With Us and It Starts With Us. And I like to figure out why things are the way that they are. Why did they name this? Why did they name this? If that makes sense. But the reason why It Starts With Us is called It Starts With Us is not what I initially thought, which I appreciated because I like being surprised. Where are my eyebrows? All right, then we have The Wedding Crasher, and I read this also in a day, September 27th to September 28th, and this is pretty much about this girl named Solange, and she crashes a wedding because she overhears the bride talking about how she's in love with another guy, and so she stops the wedding to tell the bride, like, you don't have to marry this guy, be with the one true love or whatever. And so the wedding is canceled, and the groom actually wasn't even really in love with the bride anyway. He just wanted to have a wedding just to check it off his list, and he had like a lot of goals that were just to be checked off, and getting married was one of them. So it wasn't that big of a deal that she crashed the wedding. But the guy, the groom, his name is Dean, I don't know if I said that already, but he needed to pretend that he's in a relationship in order to get promoted, and you'll figure out why if you read this book. But it's another fake dating, just like The Love Hypothesis. And this book was also one of those that they're like 30 and they act like they're teens. I don't know, there was a lot of like stuff that seemed very childish to me. Some of the banter, like, I love a good banter, but like some of it was kind of cringe, and I don't like to use that word very much. Like, it kind of was. I was like, oh, why would you say that? Yeah, like she would say stuff like I'll chop your balls off if you do this, and I'm like, girl, like, that's like, again, teenage flirting to me. So I thought it was kind of childish and kind of Solange has a big family. She's from Brazil, so they have like a big family, and I really like that dynamic. So I thought it was pretty cute how like her family was very much incorporated in this story. Yeah, it's a cute little romance. I rated this one a 3.5. Would I recommend it? Maybe. Like, if there's nothing else to read, then maybe. I think it was better than The Love Hypothesis, but do I think it was better? Yeah, I think it was better than Love Hypothesis. I mean, the way it ended was kind of cringe again to me. I don't know. But like, it's like a rom-com, so like it's not gonna be very realistic. So I was like, I'll let it pass. But there's some very saucy parts in this that I wasn't expecting. So that was pretty interesting. So like, I feel like if I finish it really quickly, it has to be somewhat good. So I liked it enough. Like, if you buy it, I don't have strong feelings for it. If you don't buy it, I also don't have strong feelings for it. But this wouldn't be the first book I would ever recommend someone. So 3.5 stars. So the next book was The Unhoneymooners, and okay, so I finished this November 4th, but it took me like 2 or 3 weeks to finish it because girl, this was so boring. I got so bored. It's so dragged out, and let's just get to the description. So pretty much this is about another girl named Olive. I don't know why authors love the name Olive, but go off. Her twin sister is getting married, and during the wedding there's a buffet, and everyone gets sick except for her and the groom's brother, and his name Ethan. And she hates Ethan, and Ethan hates her too. And they pretty much hate each other because she was eating cheese curds and he looked at her a certain way, so then she thought he was fat shaming her, and so she started being rude, and then he started being rude, and it was just like a big back and forth thing. And so that's why they hate each other. But since everyone is sick, including the bride and groom, they have this all expenses paid honeymoon to Hawaii. And so Olive and Ethan take it, even though they hate each other, but neither one of them want to give up on a free vacation. So they pretty much go to Maui and events take place. The synopsis sounded more interesting than the actual book, and that was very disappointing. It kind of gave similar vibes to The Wedding Crasher because they both are Latina, but I can't remember where she's from, but both of them have big family members. They both have large families. They both have large families and that are both very nosy, and it's both wedding themed. But the other one, The Wedding Crasher, it was easier for me to keep track of everyone in the family. This one, I couldn't keep track of who was who because they both have like lots of tias and stuff. And this one was kind of hard to keep track of. I felt like the book tried really hard to be funny, but I couldn't laugh. There was nothing about this book that was funny to me. It also had lots of banter, but I was kind of like, I don't feel like there's really anything special about it. I really can't say anything like good about it. I mean, I got through it, but dude, was I pushing to get through it, because I was like, I bought this book for $17, so you better believe I'm gonna finish it. And I knew I had this video planned out, so I needed to like power through. But dude, I rated it 2 out of 5 stars. Probably should have given it worse, but I want to be nice. So I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. Don't recommend it at all. Don't buy it. If I had to choose between this and the Wedding Crashers, definitely get the Wedding Crashers, because yeah. I hope y'all appreciate, I was chasing the sun. It's very cloudy outside, but then there's peaks where the sun comes out and I'm glowing. But then in other clips, like where's the light at? So I have one more book. Let's wrap this up. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Oh, also another note that I have about this that is kind of a note about a lot of other books that I've read so far is that whenever there's a gay character, it's always giving the same stereotypical dramatic comedic relief personality. And I think that kind of annoys me a little bit, just because I feel like they don't want to put any more depth to the character besides just them being comedic relief. And it sounds very like, I don't know, stereotypical. Like it's almost like when they have that black character that's always like also the comedic relief, the black best friend. They do that a lot with the gay characters. They did it with this book. They did it with Love Hypothesis. I think they did it with Wedding Crashers. But like, I'm kind of over it. And I wish they would have a gay character to not just always make them the stereotypical, like, sassy comedic relief character, you know? Like, they can be funny, but like, literally they all act the same. And I don't know why, but is that controversial? I don't know. This book, Get a Life, Chloe Brown. I finished this yesterday, and it was kind of also one of those ones that kind of took a few days for me to finish because I wasn't that eager and it wasn't that interesting. Pretty much it's about this girl named Chloe, and she has fibromyalgia, which is a condition that causes a lot of pain for people. So in her life, she hasn't been able to do very many things as an adult, I guess. And so she makes a list of all the things that she wants to do to get a life. She's also very wealthy. Anyway, she moves out of her parents' like mansion, I guess, gets an apartment or a flat because they're British. Okay. And she meets the superintendent of the apartment, and they hate each other, I guess. From right off the bat, they didn't really like each other, which I never really understood. We don't really get to see them meet initially. It's kind of written weird. Like in the beginning, she almost gets hit by a car, and then that's when she was like, my life flashed before my eyes and there was nothing exciting. So then she makes the list. A couple months go by, and then they're just explaining, I guess, why they don't like each other. The way they described this in the back, it made it seem like Chloe was going to be kind of like the nerd or something. And then the guy's name is Red, short for Redford, which, you know what, doesn't matter. And they said he's a handyman with tattoos, a motorcycle, and heartthrob and all that stuff. So I was kind of thinking, okay, he's maybe like the bad boy. But that's not it at all. He's very sweet, and she's, if anything, more sassy, which I guess it's fine, it doesn't really matter. But again, y'all are 30, they act like teens sometimes. The way that they act like teens in this book is just the lack of communication skills and making decisions based on assumptions, which I hate so much in real life and in books. Like, I'll give you an example. Their apartments are right across from each other, so they can see through each other's windows. And Red saw Chloe looking at him through the window, like she was staring. And he automatically thought that it was because she must think he's like an animal from the zoo, like has all these negative thoughts or whatever, which he has his own trauma with that. So I guess, you know, you do you. But like, I don't know. I just thought like some of the things that they would assume about each other were kind of like, I don't know. Is that real? A lot of these books were very like self-sabotage-y, and they just don't ever have a rational thought like, maybe he likes me, maybe she's looking at me and staring at me through the window when I'm shirtless because she thinks I'm hot. Like, that thought never comes through anyone's mind. Like, that's the first thought that comes through my mind. And maybe I'm conceited, maybe I think I feel myself too much, but like, if someone's staring at me and like I'm a man and I have a six-pack and I'm like painting or whatever, looking all hot, like, I'm not gonna think that, oh, she thinks I'm an animal in a zoo and she's disgusted. I'm like, she thinks I'm hot. So I don't know if like some of these books are really for me, because I like some type of rationality, you know what I mean? It also gave a little bit of the vibes of like everyone else is the main character in her life, but I kind of let it pass because she has fibromyalgia, so like moving out and doing things is probably more of a big deal than like the average person, so I kind of let it slide. But the romance for them were kind of weird and random for me. I really didn't understand why they liked each other so much. Like, they had this crazy attraction to each other, and deeper than physical, I felt like, in the beginning. And I think it's just because we didn't get to see them meet each other. So like the crazy attraction initially, I didn't understand where it was coming from. Like, why are you so obsessed with each other and you hate each other based on what? So I don't know. I didn't really find myself rooting for them. Like, I kind of like didn't care. Like, I don't know if that's a me thing, or if it's like, if it's me or if it's you, I don't know. Like I said, it took a while to get into it. Like, it took me a couple days before I actually finished it, and I was rushing to finish this last night because I was trying to make this video today, which good for me. But I don't know, over time I could definitely see the good qualities in them and why they would be attracted to each other. But in the beginning I was kind of like, why do they have this initial crazy animalistic attraction that I'm like, where is it coming from? I rated it a 3 out of 5 stars. I don't really recommend this book. Again, I rated it a 3 just because it was one of those books that I kept reading. Even though initially it was hard to get into, but like I finished it. It didn't take extra energy for me to try to open it and continue reading. So I don't know, I feel like that's kind of the bare minimum. I wouldn't recommend it though unless it's on sale, because it was $16. A few of these I wouldn't recommend if it was on sale. Unhoneymooners, I probably wouldn't even recommend if it was on sale. All right guys, so that was all the books that I read that was popular on TikTok this year. Overall, I don't know, I can't really say I'm very impressed. How many books did I read? I read 7, and I really only thoroughly like 3 of them. The 7 Husbands, It Ends With Us, and It Starts With Us. Those are like the top tier out of this. Then I would say Wedding Crashers. Then I would say Love Hypothesis, and then Get a Life, Chloe Brown. And then I would say The Unhoneymooners at the bottom. So if I was to rank it, that's what I would give them. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it and you want me to do more book videos, just let me know, because I really enjoy talking about it. It's kind of hard because I try not to give a lot of spoilers, but I think I did relatively okay. If I didn't say a lot about the book, it's because there's not much to be said about it. So if you have any book recommendations, leave them down below. It doesn't matter if it's popular or not, nonfiction, fiction, doesn't matter. Probably gonna do more book videos in the future, but if you enjoyed it, let me know. Leave a comment down below, and I'll see you later. Bye.